Welcome to our video on Indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples are those who have inhabited a particular region or territory for a long period of time, often long before the arrival of colonizers or settlers from other parts of the world. They have developed unique cultures, traditions, and knowledge systems, often shaped by their relationship with the land, natural resources, and wildlife around them. Throughout history, indigenous peoples have faced numerous challenges, including colonization, forced assimilation, displacement, discrimination, and marginalization. In this video, we will explore the rich and diverse cultures of indigenous peoples, their struggles against oppression, and their efforts to preserve and promote their cultures and rights. Join us as we learn more about the stories, experiences, and contributions of indigenous peoples around the world. The cultures of indigenous peoples are diverse and complex, reflecting their long histories, unique relationships with the land and natural resources, and distinct social and political systems. Indigenous cultures often encompass traditional beliefs, customs, languages, and practices that have been passed down through generations. Indigenous cultures vary widely across regions and communities, but they often share a strong connection to the natural environment, which is considered sacred and central to their ways of life. Many indigenous cultures also have a deep respect for ancestral knowledge, which is passed down through storytelling, art, music, and other forms of cultural expression. Indigenous cultures often prioritize community and collective values, with a strong emphasis on reciprocity, respect, and harmony in social relationships. Many indigenous cultures also have unique spiritual beliefs and practices, such as the use of sacred plants, ceremonies, and rituals to connect with the natural world and ancestors. Despite the diversity and richness of indigenous cultures, they have often been threatened by colonization, cultural assimilation, and other forms of oppression. However, there has been a growing recognition and appreciation of indigenous cultures in recent years, with efforts to preserve and promote indigenous languages, cultural practices, and knowledge. This has led to a resurgence of interest in indigenous cultures and the recognition of their importance in building more just, equitable, and sustainable societies. The oppression of indigenous peoples is a long-standing and complex issue that has been a result of various factors, including colonialism, imperialism, and systemic racism. Historically, indigenous peoples have been subjected to violent colonization, forced assimilation, land dispossession, and exploitation by colonizers and settlers who sought to extract resources and establish control over the territories inhabited by indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples have also been subjected to discriminatory policies and practices by governments and institutions, which have often resulted in the denial of their basic human rights, including the right to self-determination, cultural preservation, and access to education, healthcare, and other essential services. Indigenous peoples have also been impacted by environmental destruction, including deforestation, mining, and pollution, which have threatened their ways of life, cultural practices, and traditional territories. Despite the long-standing and ongoing oppression of indigenous peoples, there has been growing awareness and recognition of their rights and struggles in recent years. Indigenous peoples have been increasingly asserting their rights, demanding justice and accountability, and working to build more equitable and just societies that respect their cultures, traditions, and ways of life. The history of indigenous peoples is vast and diverse, as there are many different indigenous cultures and societies around the world. Generally speaking, indigenous peoples are groups of people who have inhabited a particular region or territory for a long period of time, often long before the arrival of colonizers or settlers from other parts of the world. Indigenous peoples have a long and complex history, dating back tens of thousands of years in some cases. They have developed unique cultures, traditions, and knowledge systems, often shaped by their relationship with the land, natural resources, and wildlife around them. Throughout history, indigenous peoples have faced numerous challenges, including colonization, forced assimilation, displacement, discrimination, and marginalization. In many cases, these challenges have resulted in the loss of traditional lands, languages, and cultures, as well as the suppression of indigenous knowledge and practices. Despite these challenges, indigenous peoples have also demonstrated remarkable resilience and resistance, fighting to preserve their cultures, languages, and ways of life. In recent decades, there has been a growing recognition of the importance of indigenous knowledge and the need to protect indigenous rights, as well as efforts to promote greater understanding and appreciation of indigenous cultures and histories. As we come to the end of this video, we hope that you have gained a greater appreciation for the rich and diverse cultures of indigenous peoples around the world. From their deep connection to the land and natural environment, to their unique social, political, and spiritual systems, indigenous peoples have much to offer the world. Despite the many challenges they have faced, indigenous peoples continue to resist oppression and fight for their rights, while also working to preserve and promote their cultures, languages, and traditions. As we move towards a more just and equitable world, it is important that we recognize and honor the contributions and struggles of indigenous peoples and work together to build more respectful and sustainable relationships with them and the natural world. Thank you for joining us on this journey of learning and exploration, and we hope that you will continue to learn more about indigenous peoples and support their ongoing struggles for justice and recognition. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. We will be posting more knowledgeable videos about history and the future.